When I was leaving school, I could say that my endeavor in school cumulatively had led me to a self worth of about a little above $10,000 at the time. Um, and all that went into trying to just fund Lofting. My childhood friend who also funded Lofting poured in a lot of money. He literally used to joke about it that, in the US, their retirement plan is called 401k. They literally, had to pour his 401k into funding Lofting. Spent some time in Ibadan, and Michael grew up in Ibadan. Dami, we all have that, very interesting, yeah, to it. But it's a Pan African team. We have operations. That fund currently have operations in Kenya, in Cairo, or rather in Nairobi, in Cairo, in South Africa, and in Lagos. Here, we do quite, all these ecosystems. We invest in them. We're active in them, and yeah.
Thanks a lot for sharing that. Now, in my head, I am trying to understand how you navigated from that business that you and your friend started, like as we say, like play, right? You started it like when you are 19, more or less, and and then you're doing some consulting and all of that. It wasn't like a big deal. And at some point, I don't know what happened. We probably shared that, but at some point, a few things happened, right? You started the Innovation Hub, and then you decided to go into VCs and angel investing and all of that. And today we're looking back, and if you add up everything that you've raised, we're talking about, if not more than $100 million that have already been raised cumulatively or almost, right? And my question, I think, is around at what point did that if what point was the inflection point that you can say, okay, we move from being, the small players and then want to begin to play in the big league? And what really led to that? Is that question clear enough?
Yes. So you're saying, yeah, what was our inflection point? What shifted? What was the thing that changed the story for us? It's actually a tough question to answer because looking back, actually, it's not very easy to just say that it was one day you woke up and then there was this thing. It's a cumulative of the mindset. It's a cumulative of the beliefs, of our vision, of our passion, and all these things kind of like play. And honestly, and I think that's how real. I think that's how this is really definition of entrepreneurship. A lot of times, some people may be able to point to say, oh, there was an inflection point here. This particular change, but if you're not prepared for those inflection points, you won't be able to take advantage of those inflection points. So I wouldn't say those inflection points are responsible for whatever we call success, which for us we just feel is the beginning. Now that we're all doing other things, trying to build, touch lives in different ways, it's just the beginning for us. But I must talk about some milestones that I think are very, very important that also woke us up. So one of it was I talked about the bankruptcy. In 2012, 2013, our funds started dwindling because we're self-funded. We didn't start out with investors. We don't have external investors in Lofting, for example. We really have partners that own Lofting and staff members that own Lofting because we have an ESOP where staff also share in that opportunity. So we're self-funded. I told you that I was still an entrepreneur. When I was leaving school, I could say that my endeavor in school cumulatively had led me to a self worth of about, this is me my calculation, and this was even my own liquidity at the time as a student leaving school, was around $10,000 at the time, because Dollar then was at around what about 100 naira plus. And when I was leaving school, I had you know less than 2 million US, less than 2 million naira rather at the time. So it was a little above $10,000 at the time. Um, and all that went into trying to just fund Lofting. My childhood friend who also funded Lofting poured in a lot of money. He literally used to joke about it that in the US their retirement plan is called 401k. They literally had to pour his 401k into funding Lofting. It was working in the US then. I was the only one in Nigeria. But we had to pay staff. We had to cover operations. We had support from people. His uncle gave us his gate man house at his office on Ogba in Ikeja. That was our first office. So we didn't have to pay rent, but we had to pay staff. I could tell you for a fact then I was earning 10,000 naira. I was paying myself 10,000 naira, but my least paid staff at the time was 40,000 naira because these were all very smart guys. 10,000 naira couldn't even after like 2 months. I mean, after like 2 weeks of transportation, money is already burnt. So these are all things that really formed us. We struggled through all that, but by 2012, 2013, funds started dwindling, and we almost bank. We could just it got to a month, and we knew that man, after this month's salary, there was no fund anywhere anymore. And then we just got lucky. I reached out to someone I'd met. So there was this day that the minister of ICT at the time, Bola Johnson, had met us at CC Hub, called for a meeting at CC Hub. And that meeting, I told them that it was time. This was 2012. I told them that it was time that Nigeria, that the tech hub, that tech ecosystem, got an angel network. Because I'd met prior to then, I'd met with a group from the World Bank called InfoDev. They came to Nigeria. They met all of us that were the tech players in the ecosystem at the Tony Emelu Foundation. And I told them, I said, look, we have this blueprint at Lofting. We wanted to call it Lofting Angel Network. We already have friends that are investing in our startups. We think that this is the way to go so that we can inspire people to continue to do the work they do. And they said, no, angel networks are not named after companies; they are named after cities. And they said, if you can organize that, we will support you. So when I went to this meeting that we met at CC Hub, the minister at the time, Bola Johnson, said, I will introduce you to my Oga at Accenture. So Bola Johnson was ex-Accenture. And while she was at Accenture, she also had a boss before she became the boss at Accenture. The person called Mr. Dotun Sulaiman. He's a veteran in Nigeria, in the Nigerian business space. And said, my Oga is a perfect person. He's the one that invests in small businesses. He's a perfect person to help you with your angel network idea. So at the time, I developed this relationship with this very gracious man who poured everything into me, gave me whenever I call. He's a busy man. I mean, as at the time, he was like on the board of 6 different public quoted companies. But if I call him, he would answer. And he would answer my questions. He was very gracious. So I developed a relationship with him and I told him, sir. So at this time, when we knew we couldn't go ahead anymore, unfortunately for us too, at the time, so I can't tell a story without talking about the Africa Leadership Forum. Africa Leadership Forum at the time was being led by an amazing man called Dr. Adeniwale. We call him Oga. But Dr. Adeniwale had also a solid partner in person of Dr. Ajayi, who my partner, Michael, had met in 2010 at a conference. So this is our journey to setting up Wennovation Hub. Michael, when we got this idea of, and I'm going to connect everything. When we got this idea of, young people running business at incubator, at the same time, World Bank had a call for idea for their conference they called ABCD, Annual Banking Conference for Developing Economies, ABCD, Annual Banking Conference on Developing Economies. So they will call all these development economies together to talk about common challenges. And that year's theme in 2010 was on youth and employment. And there was a call for idea on the best idea. So we put in our own idea that want, of how to engage youth, leveraging the growing technology space to solve problems, building apps and solutions, technology-driven solutions to solve problems. So out of over 3,000 entrants, we were called, we were one of the top seven. And my friend had to fly, was in based in US at the time, had to fly to Stockholm to pitch. And on the panel that I pitched to was Dr. Ajayi, who was deputy of Dr. Aderinwale. They were both running the Africa Leadership Forum at the time, and Africa Leadership Forum got one of the 6 licenses to run the CBN funded Entrepreneurship Development Center. So these were normal MSMEs. They were supporting soap makers, even to set up a factory and so on and so forth. That was what Entrepreneurship Development Centers was all about. But they loved the idea. We didn't win. We didn't come top three of that pitch that my friend went to go and pitch. But we met Dr. Adeniwale, Dr. Ajayi, who said, you need to meet Dr. Adeniwale. So my friend flew to New York to meet Dr. Adeniwale. And that was all in 2012, 2010. And that was how, in 2011, Dr. Adeniwale's organization, Africa Leadership Forum, signed an agreement with us to give us a space in that same Entrepreneurship Development Center in Lagos where we can start Wennovation Hub. So they gave us laptops, they gave us one MacBook and 4 PCs. They furnished the space. They just didn't pay for salaries. They said, you should guys go and figure out salaries. So we had the space in 2011 to start with. So unfortunately for us in 2013, they called us and said, sorry, funding from CBN is drying, and we have to lose the space. So you guys have to leave. So it was about the same time we couldn't also pay salaries. So it was all coming almost to a halt. So I had to reach out to, Mr. Dr. Sulaiman and say, sir, we have entrepreneurs. I was a bachelor and I was living in this 3-bedroom apartment with 2 of my other staff. And we told all the startups then to come to the house then. So they would come, instead of going to the hub, there was no hub anymore. They come to the house in the morning, they'll go in the evening. And we're doing the thing in the house. And that went on for 6 weeks. But in the beginning of all that, I reached out to Mr. Dr. Sulaiman and he said, Wole, we're actually setting up a hub now, need that funded. And I think we'll need your expertise to run the hub. That was how I ended up, becoming the operations manager at Idea Hub. So I did that in Idea Hub from 2013 till 2014, over a year plus, when I left Idea Hub, but helped them set up, ran the inaugural accelerator for Idea Hub. Now, this is another interesting story of my life. In the inaugural program, accelerator of Idea Hub, we had 10 startups. Now, the most successful startup at the time probably broke the ground for raising funds. The name of that startup was ISEC. They raised $10 million at the valuation of $100 million, funny enough, at that time. And all that money was local funding from a PE firm because they were right on time around the CBN policy. The CBN policy said all the banks should move their hosting from international to local. And that they should also use local security agencies, more or less, to secure that hosting. And ISEC was all about security, for banks. So they were right on point, and so they were able to raise money then. So they were the most successful of the 10 startups in my cohort at the time. But in that same cohort was another startup called Precurio, which was led by Shola Akinlade. Shola Akinlade, after that program, went on to meet, of course, his partner was also working in the same building, in that same Idea Hub building, besides CC Hub in Yaba at the time. Met his partner, Ezra, and they founded Paystack. So he left Precurio to go on to found Paystack. So it was in my accelerator at the time which I had the opportunity of all these brilliant guys in that cohort. And became, really built something amazing out of Paystack, right? But at the same time, my organization, which I went to join Idea Hub and then went back to, I'd invested in Andela, and Andela had become, really big at the time. He left Andela to go and start Flutterwave, and we also went on to invest with him. So all these, unicorns were forming round around the work that I was privileged to do, and these great entrepreneurs in our lives in one way or the other. And all that for me um speaks to really shaped how I view life. A lot of the startups that I've worked with were just startups then. Founders had gone on to build amazing things, and that really speaks to how I see life and how we should just focus on inspiring people to solve problems we can, because we can't solve all the problems by ourselves alone.
You see, I just kept quiet and just allow you just to share your because it looks like you've gone through a whole lot, right? And I believe that our audience will have a lot to just listening to your story. We'll have a lot to just connect the dots and say, "Wow, that's." Because some of these names we just hear them today, right? We just see Paystack here, we hear Flutterwave here, but you're telling us a back end story, right? That more often than not we don't get to hear, right? We just hear that they raised 1 billion, they raised this, and everybody's like, "Hey, how did they raise this thing?" Right? But it's good to hear you share some of this perspective now just for my education, right? And for the education of our audience. What does a typical hub do in terms of how you enable businesses, right? Because at times we just hear hub here, innovation hub, this hub, that hub, right? But it's not just the name, right? There are certain enablement, there are certain things that you make happen that enable these guys to be able to come up with great ideas and all of that. Before we go on your own journey, since you're an expert in that area, will you be able to just double click and share what you do as either a combinator or a hub, right? To enable businesses thrive or ideate and scale.
Great. Just to put the perspective. So when I was talking about combinator, then I was referring to Y Combinator. Y
Mm.
Combinator is the world most successful accelerator.
Even
They're US
today.
based. Yeah, they give birth to the likes of Airbnb.
Mm,
So many names, like so many. In fact, asset under management for Y Combinator is over 400 billion US dollars. Because they have several companies that have gone to IPO, and they started from idea stage from Y Combinator. So
kind of, yeah.
so we modeled around Y Combinator, because but we all started around the same time. So
Mm,
just to speak to what a hub is, a tech hub, as is usually being called, is a place where support is provided for innovators to focus and build innovative solutions as a response to tough socioeconomic challenges. A typical hub will come with the resources that those entrepreneurs will need or innovators will need. These resources include knowledge, include sector knowledge. So general knowledge is different from sector specific knowledge. Usually sector specific knowledge will come through mentors and access to market consultants in the space. It comes with funding in most cases. In some cases, comes with physical workspace support, so you don't need to worry about rent. They work all this into a deal with you. Usually, in some cases, tech ops will take equity positions in startups that they are supporting. In some cases, they even would go on to invest in those startups and take bigger equity position. But the most important thing that tech ops provide is that knowledge, both the general entrepreneurship knowledge, that is how to build a business, and then this sector specific knowledge, or things you call mentoring, which are you look for specialists in that space that can groom those entrepreneurs, and funding, access to space, and then access to market. So they help these businesses navigate things like compliance, government regulations, and sometimes they help them and hold them to imagine a hub introducing you to Dangote to say you can become a supplier to Dangote, you can become a service provider to Dangote. You know that God has buttered your bread, right? Because then you have a big company that can continue to pay you, and you don't need to worry about struggles that small businesses will have. That's what a tech hub will do. Now, the underlying thing that makes it a tech hub is that all these things is based on of technology and innovation. And the difference between innovation and technology, really, we must point out is that technology in itself is, even though we tend to call it digital technology today, technology itself spans beyond, digital. So for example, the door handle that we all use today to open a door is a technology to open that door. The key to open a door is a technology to open, to lock, to make a place secured. But tech hubs are more tuned towards digital technology and then innovation, which, so that is innovative thinking around how to deliver value in a better way, than what it is. So imagine what India did with the centrifuges, where centrifuges were very expensive, or let me use the microscope. Used to be very expensive and originally used to cost like $10,000, and Indians went on to build a 2000 version of it. I can give you several examples of that innovation thinking, but you get it. The idea is that how can you take something that is currently hard to reach and then make it accessible to even more people that need that service or solution the most. So that's what tech hubs are really all about.
I get it. I get it. Thank you very much for sharing that. Transparently, I've never heard it explained like that, right? And if I go back to my, is it, I didn't do chemistry, but chemistry days, right? It's like creating a kind of culture, right? Within which certain things can grow in a particular. You understand what I mean? So you create
Exactly.
that culture, and you expect that certain things will just grow because that environment allows for and enables and give them everything that they need to succeed, and that is really
Essentially a
very
womb.
helpful.
Essentially a womb. Yeah.
Like a womb, yeah, yeah, like a womb, right? Actually, and things just grow out of it, right? But I mean, thinking about the business side of that now, you must have to put all of that resources together for you as Winnovator, right? Because all that you need to put together to ensure that when these guys come, they get everything they need to be able to deliver or to be able to build, right? It means that you're also going out on a limb, you're taking a risk, right? Because if you don't get lucky, right? After some time, the funds will run dry because the people that put money into that to want some return and all of that, correct, right?
Yes. And it's interesting you mentioned that because, I just go back from about a month ago. I just go back from a group of, we call ourselves ESOs. So you can call hubs to ESOs, entrepreneurship support organizations. 25 of us were selected by Connector Africa to run, one of the biggest incubators that you will see very soon. And one of the things everybody was talking about was sustainability of the hubs. And I told them in that group, it was in Nairobi. I said, guys, you would know peace when you know that your users, which are your entrepreneurs, are not your customers. When people usually come to, when as entrepreneurship support organizations, people come to us to build businesses, and they usually come without, money, without almost nothing. They usually come with their shoes and their cats, like we usually call it, and just idea and sheer determination to build something. Those people were not going to pay your salary. They're not going to pay your rent. They're not going to keep your lights
They
on.
don't have it. They're
Um,
not they're not funded for it.
yeah, you might be lucky to be able to support those that are transitioning from paid employment to do that, because then they have money. They've stacked up money to do that. But usually, when you're talking about people that are jobless, or looking for employment, that are going into that, it becomes a lot, more difficult for them to be able to pay your bills. So you literally, as a hub, you need to figure out how to fund your operations. That's one of the things that you need to figure out. So your customers are different from your users. Your users are the entrepreneurs, are the innovators, but your customers are other organizations that want to invest in those entrepreneurs, and some of the organizations that want to support those entrepreneurs. So they will gladly give you money to run a program. They will gladly tell you that they want to invest in entrepreneurs, and so um, they will then give you money to invest in entrepreneur through the VC fund, like I told you. And then down the line, if you're lucky, 5% of all those guys that you're supporting will become really will become successful, like the fund, right? And then you can then now exit from those investments or from those stakes you have, if you're lucky. And then that can then now provide some sort of, money back to you. I'm lucky, for example, where I'm currently working, Sweet for short, Southwest Innovation and Technology Company Limited. Sweet is funded by Odua, and I've been lucky to be given some capital to run my program. So, for example, at Sweet, our unique selling point at Sweet is that we're focused on commercializing research outputs. So before now, I was just supporting innovators, from everywhere, from academia, from the street, from university, from pre-university, anybody. So far, you're an innovator. But at Sweet, we're focused on researchers. So if you're an industry researcher or you're an academic researcher, you have an IP that you're working on, and that IP is ripe, and you need support to take it to the market. That's what we do at Sweet. And for the next 5 years at Sweet, with the support of Odua, we will be investing $250,000 in our accelerator, which are looking for more investors to join us in our accelerator. That we can then put a few of those, researchers with their outputs, or those research outputs, and then accelerate in the market. Let me give you as context to what can come out of research commercialization. A group of researchers in Unilag got some grants to build a urine analysis test kit for malaria. So before now, and it's the first of its kind in the world, they've done it successfully. Before now, if you have malaria, you have to go to the hospital.
Hey, thanks a lot for taking the time to watch the podcast. We are super thankful for you taking that time and investing the time to learn. We hope that you find the story inspiring, and beyond that, that you've been able to articulate one or two things that you want to do differently in your own entrepreneurial journey. May I encourage you to please like, subscribe, comment, and please share the word within your own circle of influence, especially within those that you think are on the same entrepreneurial journey with you. May I also encourage you to please, beyond subscribing to our YouTube channel, follow us on our other social media platforms. That means a lot to us, and we can see that that helps us to track that we're making some progress and so making some impact. Thanks a lot once again for taking the time to watch, and please see you on the next episode.